It's the tale of like two different protests. So what we saw on Friday, where the protests winded through our streets on like 12th Avenue and Franklin, there was definitely some tense moments, but we saw community leaders helping diffuse some of those really tense moments that could have gone very differently. We saw a lot of our officers performing very professionally at the end of and then they walked back. And so at the end of the night, became a little violent where a small segment of the protest group threw bricks and cement chunks at officers. Several of our officers were hit in the head with bricks. So we had 7 officers injured there. Luckily, no injuries that had to be hospitalized for, but that could have gone very differently. There were some protesters that would try to pull the officers into the crowd. I think we've seen that in protests around the country too, where officers are dragged into the crowd and assaulted. So that was a challenge, but still we didn't see any businesses looted. We didn't see widespread organization of boxes of rocks and things delivered and utilized. And then yesterday, on Saturday during the day, from about 9 o'clock till dark, we saw about 1,000 protesters arrive at the Capitol, and eventually a couple different groups split up, and large group were walking around downtown, eventually to West Sac and getting on to Interstate 5. At times, some in that group would throw water bottles at officers, but for the most part, that group was fairly calm. At times, we would even hear protesters telling other protesters not to damage cars, not to break windows, and in fact, I don't know of any cars and businesses that were damaged during that time. So that went on for hours, and obviously volatile at times in terms of emotions and yelling and chanting and things like that, but nothing what we saw at night. Then the evening came, and we saw the group of 1,000 dwindle to about 350 to 400, and it changed. And the group started breaking windows as they walked around downtown, broke out the windows in front of the jail, eventually lit fires in the middle of the street, lit a couch on fire, lit a trash can on fire. And then we saw things like changing of shifts and new protesters rotating in an organized fashion. Then we have seen last night where boxes of rocks were delivered to the protesters, very organized. And then they would throw those rocks at officers all night long. There was some sort of round object that they would light on fire and throw at the officers. When we'd go to arrest somebody, they seemed to have coordination to where they would try to prevent their arrest, where they would run interference while that person tried to disappear back into the crowd. They had groups of people that would run down the street, and as they're running, break windows and spray paint and do property damage, but not go in and not linger. So they're moving, so it's hard to catch up with. And then they started looting businesses in our Doco area, with at least 10 businesses there looted, and businesses outside of that area, and even outside of downtown, the Target on Riverside and Broadway they went to. So it seemed a segment of it seemed very coordinated, very violent. And so as much as we hate to see our businesses looted, we still have to do it. It's not like a normal burglary where we can dispatch a couple of officers there and then they deal with it. In a protest like this, where a segment of the protesters are intent on injuring officers, and we've seen officers killed in other cities during this protest, we can't just send 3 officers. We have to send a contingent of officers that are like protection officers and then arrest officers. And obviously the folks are running in the business and then running out, so they're not staying long. So we were able to arrest multiple looters last night. We were able to arrest a lot of folks that refused to leave. So about 18 in all, several from our area, not necessarily all from Sacramento, but from our region. One was from out of state in Washington. Our arrest on Friday night for throwing a brick at an officer, he's from not out of state, but not in our region. So there's definitely a faction of that protest that we've never seen before. And we're a city that has protests regularly as the capital of California. that was intent and coordinated and organized, intent on looting, damage, and violence. So that was a challenge to be able to get officers moved to these different locations and effect arrest when they are looting and causing damage and assaulting people. In terms of percentages, I don't know. But I do know that we had people that are local to our city at the protests. And I know we have people that weren't local to our city. One, because of the arrests, at least two of them, one of them was out of state. So factually, the ones we arrested, we know some of them were not from our area. But just judging by, you know, we live and work here. We recognize people, and there's a lot of people that are not from here. And I think it was evident in what they did in our city. I think for the most part, the people that are from here didn't do those activities. And so to what percentage, I don't know. What I do believe is there was a faction, I'm not sure how large, that was coordinated, organized, and not just we're going to go protest, but they have a plan, and they have, I mean, they're delivering boxes of rocks. That's not what we normally see at our protests. They have, you know, things they light on fire to throw at officers. They have a plan when we go to arrest people. They split up, I think, on purpose, and they did those sort of things. So to what percentage that was, it was enough to cause the damage that we saw in our city and put a lot of people's lives in danger. But I don't know if that was the majority of people. I would guess that during the day, a lot of those folks were truly here to protest and truly here for that very issue and wanting to see change and demanding change and hurt and frustration and all that. And as we got into the dark, nighttime, we got more into people's motive was destruction.
Could you talk about any estimates in terms of a cost to the city just based on the last 2 days of protesting?
That I don't know. You'd have to talk to like the business associations or the businesses themselves. But I can tell you there was a lot of damage. And at least two or more of the businesses, they did light fires on the inside. And I can only assume that is to light the building on fire like we've seen in other cities. But fortunately, whether it was the sprinkler system in some businesses or the officers getting there in time to put the fire out, we also had fire available last night. None of that came to fruition. But there is a lot of damage in our businesses. If you go into Macy's or Sharif's Jewelers, you can just see from the outside there's a lot of damage. So I don't know how much that is going to cost, but it's going to cost a lot. And in a time that we've been basically shut down for the last 2 or 3 months and our businesses are struggling already, I think it's doubly difficult for our businesses at the time that this is occurring.
Have you considered any discussions about a curfew based on the last couple of nights of protesting? And I know some law enforcement agencies and mayors across the state or across the country have chosen to do that in the wake of these protests.
Yeah, that is a discussion that's currently going on, especially amongst our elected leaders. And the question in my mind is really, will that help us address these activities should they happen again tonight or the next night? Because one thing I think I know for sure is it won't impact the segment that wanted to do the violence and mayhem and damage last night. A curfew is not going to mean anything to them. So I don't think that will change anything that they do. So the question is really, does that enable us and give us a better opportunity to prevent them from accomplishing that? And that's something we're talking about now. So I don't know where that will end, but I know it's not going to change that segment of the protest group that wanted to cause all that damage. And again, I can't reiterate enough that there's a lot of the protesters, especially during the day, that's not what they were doing. They were expressing their opinions and emotion about an extremely emotional, important issue. And I think that's why we saw that crowd dwindle. We saw that crowd go to about 300 or 400 people from highs of 1,000 or more during the day. And my guess is there's people that don't believe what happened last night is good for their city. And as somebody that was born and raised and lived my whole life in the city, I can tell you right now that I guarantee you that's not good for our city. That's not going to move us forward. That's not going to get us where we need to go on this very important issue. And that's just people that were doing that don't care for our city, don't care for the people that live here, and just they just don't care about Sacramento. And so we're going to do everything we can to prevent looting and burglary and violence tonight. And there's decisions to be made every minute of a protest, and they're depend on what the protesters are doing, the safety of the protesters, the safety of the surrounding public and our officers. And it's exceptionally important when the activity is rocks being thrown, fire being thrown. At one point, a car drove by at the J Street location and shot a gun out the window of the car. So it could have gone a lot worse. It could have looked like some of these other cities that are burning. And so I think we're lucky, we're fortunate to have community leaders and police officers that are extremely professional in the most trying of circumstances. I mean, just in a very emotional time. And so hopefully we'll see that again tonight. That's a great question. When we talk about Stephon Clark, we saw literally like 2 years worth of protests. And some of those got very volatile and were obviously filled with a lot of emotion. And we did have at times violence, whether it's at a Kings game where people are being assaulted or windows being broken on cars driving by. So we did have some of that, not a lot of it, but we did have some of that. But I think the biggest difference I would say is those were largely our community protesting over something that is very emotional, that is extremely important. And if you will, we're the epicenter of it because the shooting happened in our city. I think the difference between that and those prolonged protests in our city and last night is those protests had people from our community that cared about our community, and at times that let their emotions run over them and became violent or broke things, but they cared about our community. So their bottom line is they want things to get better. They want our community to be better. They want our police department to be better. They want our officers to be better. And although we might have difference of opinions of how we accomplish that, they, at the end of the day, are from and care about our community. The people last night, they did not care about our community. They did not. So I think you go from, yeah, your emotions might run over you and you might do things that maybe you don't do normal times, but those remain relatively minor. When you don't care about our community and your goal is to create mayhem and destruction and violence, that's exactly what we saw last night. They don't care about Sacramento.
I'm aware you spoke with our city's mayor just a few moments ago. I was wondering if you could talk briefly about what your conversation was with him and how you all plan to move forward.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to talk about a private conversation with the mayor, but I will say this, whether it's the mayor or our department or the city manager or the assistant city manager or the city council, everybody's concerned about what took place in our city over the last 2 days. Everybody's concerned about what took place in Minnesota with the death of Mr. Floyd and the tragic thing that we watched play out on video and the callousness that appeared to be on that officer's face and what he did in that incident. Everybody's concerned about it. So like any good organization in any good city, we might have differences of opinions of how we get things done or conversations of how to get things done. And that's what the process we go through. I can guarantee you all those people, the mayor, council, city manager, the police officers, the police department, our goal is to make sure that our city is safe and that we don't have what happened last night. And so people in the police department and council and city managers working hard on that. And that's what we're all trying to accomplish in partnership with our businesses. The last thing we want is for our business owners to have to do what they're doing today, sweep up their business and have extreme financial hardship now in light of already existing financial hardship from the COVID crisis. And these are businesses that our officers and our departments know. These are business people, business managers, owners, employees that we see every day. This is our community that our officers patrol and ride bikes in and live in and work in. And so it's challenging when we watch those folks have to now rebuild their business and watch people that don't care about our city come in and destroy people's livelihoods. So yeah, it's an emotional time, I'm sure, for the businesses downtown, and we are going to do like we did last night, everything we possibly can to protect their businesses, protect their livelihood, to protect people's safety, our officers' safety, the community safety, and the protesters' safety. So all of those play into it. So how many officers we have that are available to respond to that location? Again, we can't just send one officer for property damage. Is as hard as that is to see, we don't want an officer to be killed because we sent one or two officers in a situation that required 30. And so because of so many things that were going on at different locations, there were several of the businesses that people might not see any police officers there, but they were getting there, and we have to have enough to get over there to do that safely. And so, like I said, we did arrest some people for looting, some in the actual act of looting. We did have intelligence that some place, would get hit and burglarized and looted, and so we were able to get some of those instances, officers and teams of officers to those locations that prevented it from being looted, as we see protesters pull up and then leave because they see the officers there. So that did happen on occasion. Unfortunately, there was a lot of businesses downtown that we were not able to get to in that form of fashion. But I'll also say this, we have a lot of video, and a lot of it is from live streaming or video from our media. A lot of it is from cameras from businesses. A lot of it is from our cameras at intersections and things. And so our detectives and our officers will be reviewing those. We have taken reports on every one of these businesses and the fires and all the other criminal activity that happened last night. And if we can identify any of these people that did that damage and assaulted officers and lit fires, we will be arresting them. I'm extremely grateful, and I think our whole city should be grateful for folks like that. But I think that's another example of who cares about our city and who doesn't. Those are people that are probably from our city or at least care about our city. And so they don't see how that helps us address a very important issue. And again, I can't reiterate, I fully believe that the primary people that were last night doing that damage and assaulting folks, they don't care about our city. And I think what you just mentioned about people coming on their own time on a Sunday to clean up graffiti off the police officers memorial, off of buildings downtown and things like that, that are not employees. They don't own it. They don't have a financial interest in it. Their interest is the well-being of our city. Their interest is how does our community continue to improve and get better and be good for all people. So I'm extremely thankful to them, but I think that's an example of who cares for our city. And last night was an example in some of those occasions who doesn't care for our city.